Hey folks, it's June 7th, Sunday, 2020. And let's start by looking at the high level view. The expectation was for June to hit 3159 from SSG. And we also mentioned that if 3159 is exceeded, then that basically brings into focus the um, complete extent of the inverted Gann cycle on a monthly basis, which comes in at 3252. And from the Nichan model, we know the February sell pivot was at 3244. So at this point, we've run into some significant annual resistance, and the turn down should be pretty swift from here in grand scheme of things when it's all said and done. And also note that we have run into the open of 2020 at 32.36. So our turn down is pretty um, evident from these levels. So looking at the monthly wick cycles, we basically expected that we need to exceed 2911 initially, and that occurred in early June or maybe third week of last week of May. And then eventually, when that was surpassed, for a stronger move to occur, I think this was the date I said that we've had enough retests, and then this is where a swift move higher could occur. So that's what we got. And at this point, it's very, very evident that we're probably sitting 2 or 3 sigmas away from the monthly waves pivot at 3079.62. And we also ran into most significant CIT for June of June 5th. And I don't believe that's going to go in vain. So our turndown is imminent, and the only thing lacking is the support of the price models. But from a timing perspective, I believe we are there. Um, so once again, what the monthly wave would want to do now is that, hey, I'm so far away riding the monthly wave pivots. I should go back and retest if it is okay to stay above it. And so that brings into light 3093.35, and that potentially could be the target on the low side for this week. And so I think that's kind of the key message from the monthly wick cycles, that this is kind of the next retest point for the bull, which is about to go on a pause. So from there, let's go into the daily wick cycles. And our expectation for Friday was that we hit 3144, but when the market opened, we had actually exceeded 3159, and that's where I had suggested that the market goes on steroids because that was kind of the upper end for June. And beyond that, basically what you get is an inverted wave, and the maximum inverted um, strength was into 3252, right? So we landed at 3211 and then backed off. And I think at this point, the upper pivots here will remain a controlling factor and are unlikely to be exceeded in June. The midpoint for this week, the mob on a weekly basis is 3156.36. Remember, the starting midpoint on Monday becomes the weekly pivot. So below 3156.36, the market is going to move down very swiftly. because at that point you fill in the gap from Friday open, and moving below that, in essence, giving that up is not good news for the bulls. And it won't take much for the market to actually slide down to 3088.61, which is pretty close to the W4 or wave 4 of a lower degree. And for from an Elliott wave stance for market to vet that it is still a bull, it has to retest that level. Any breach of that actually confirms that a mini bear is in place. I I would give it 60-40 chance that we actually hit this level this week, although not so apparent from the neurals, but just from an Elliott wave stance and a couple of other cycles that I have, I see that this could be a potential target on the downside, and that's where the bounce would happen this week. If not, I think then this weekly mob might remain the controlling factor, and market might just bob between the midpoint and previous week's highs or Friday's highs, plus maybe at max 32.26 ES. So the nominal range showed from the pattern, best case is 31.56 through, let's just say, 32.30 SPX. Those are the SPX numbers, minus 4 for ES. And then I have an oddball chance that we actually go down to test the Tuesday 7:02 p.m. Pivot last week at 30.77. That actually gave us a massive bounce. Looking at the Gann model, um, once again, a couple of things. From this model, the market is now ripe to go back and test the June mob at 3016.51. And obviously the max date for that is July 7th, but I believe this will come in way earlier than that. A temporary breach is possible as well of this pivot, and it is likely that we basically find support at May and June's mob. So in essence, you're looking at 2915.45, and the data label hasn't printed here, but that's 3016.51. Midpoint being 2965.75. So I think that's kind of the target of this upcoming downturn. And from a time perspective, I think we see these numbers by June 27th and max July 7th. Cutting over to the strategy grid, we completed the full positive cycle in June, and noticed that we never exceeded even the quarterly negative cycle in June. So that in itself, as a future reference, when you see that kind of a thing, you know, where the market doesn't even muster enough courage to clear the, touch the negative fourth cycle, quarterly cycle, one-fourth cycle, um, then obviously the strength is to the upside. That's what we got. And then this is once the full extent is cleared, what could be the potential upcycle? And what this means is actually the market actually ends up eating the upcycle from the forward month almost. So, that's where I'm able to determine this. And that actually also points to inversion. So these point to the complete zero sum extremities. And you look at the zero sum extremities, and you see below is 3031. We never even went down to here. And then basically, on the upside, we're almost here. This remains inverted this way, so this is pretty unhealthy. These moves retrace, almost often retrace, and from a timing perspective, uh, we are we are bound to see that, from time and cycles as well. These are the controlling stops for this week, and I believe for rest of June, and we're unlikely to exceed these numbers on the top side. Looking at the timing calendar, and again, do not infer price levels from this. And one thing about cycles is they can be completely wasted. If you recall, May did have a down cycle, but what we got was a sideways movement, which rest of the folks out there believed would cause a crash or a flash crash, and so on and so forth. And um, I was able to discern it's gonna move sideways into the third week of May before bursting up. So that's what happened. Um, but if you look at it, just like the highest strength CITs on the upside here are June 5th and June 15th, the lowest strength is actually on July 7th. So the low could come in many ways. You could get like a big whack down into June 23rd, rest of it kind of goes sideways, but the actual takeoff only begins in July again. So, so I'm force fitting the price on this. It works sometimes. Mostly it's been working, but I wouldn't say it's like a short thing. And I haven't like completed my research on that, so just because of lack of time. So I don't think this CIT goes to waste, and I believe we could have marked a top here from a timing perspective, but it's a little bit unnerving that I do not have full-blown sell signals yet. So the outcome potentially is kind of a big decline this week that recovers and then forms a double top, and obviously sell signals start to develop. So, just figure out how would you kind of play that conservatively until you start seeing sell signals. And of course, through our daily reports, we should know there's a sell signal. I will tell you that sometimes, again, I haven't measured the probability, but at times, if the close is less than the PM pivot, which was the case on Friday, it is actually an ultimate sell. So, it ultimately does lead to a sell. Okay, now for this week, I think the best case on the top side would be 3226 ES from the neural and from, you don't see that here, but if I invert it, that's the value I'll get. You can check that out in the subs Excel. And on the downside, the neural shows 3148-ish ES. And like I said, it is possible that we get a bigger back down at any point, especially if 6.5 is working. So we could see a complete retrace of the Friday move and retest of the 3088 on the ES this week itself before we get some recovery and a great chance to actually short. I think we should short from a confirmed signal. Okay, before that, just conservative posturing using ETFs or inverse ETFs may be the way to go. So that's kind of the update. And there are two smart CITs put out here. The first one is actually bang at midnight tonight. And I'm assuming and hoping it comes in high as a retest of last week's high. It'll be a great place to short if you're coming in high, whether a retest or around 32.26 ES. So if that happens, great place to short. Okay. And then the other one is obviously it's not very clear since this is a cluster. This is a cluster CIT that spans 2 days. Um, but even then, I am determining the apex as Tuesday 2:10 p.m. Again, not predicting what it's gonna be. If this is the high, then shouldn't this be the low? and this could be like 100 points lower. I don't know. I mean, that's a possibility. So we'll have to judge the arrival